But what happens when even the strongest body can no longer carry the weight of greatness? It was supposed to be just another evening of tennis magic. The crowd at the Miami Open 2025 was buzzing with electricity, chanting, clapping, and waiting for a glimpse of the legend herself, Venus Williams. For nearly 3 decades, she had been the symbol of power, grace, and resilience, a woman who had redefined women's tennis and carved her name into history. But on that night, in front of thousands of stunned fans, something happened that no one could have predicted. The moment began innocently enough. Venus had just unleashed one of her trademark forehands, that same crushing flat stroke that had terrified opponents for years. The ball flew across the court like a bullet, and for a brief second it felt as if time had reversed itself. The crowd roared. They were witnessing the Venus of old. But then, in a split second, everything changed. Venus stumbled. She froze. Her face twisted in pain, and then she collapsed. The noise evaporated, replaced by a suffocating silence. Thousands of people held their breath as the 44-year-old champion clutched her leg, her body trembling, her eyes fixed on the ground. Fans covered their mouths. Some stood in shock. Others couldn't move at all. Even the commentators, usually quick with words, faltered. One voice whispered, "This is not what anyone wanted to see." Another simply said, almost in disbelief, "Venus Williams in pain." Medics rushed to the court. Her opponent froze for a moment before moving closer, concern written all over her face. And there lay Venus, the warrior who had faced down champions, illnesses, and age itself, refusing to shed a tear, her pride still intact even as agony spread through her body. Cameras zoomed in, and the image of her stoic expression was seared into the memory of millions watching around the world. This wasn't just another injury. This was a heartbreaking, almost unbearable reminder that even legends are human. For those who had followed her journey since the late 1990s, the moment was surreal. They had seen her lift Wimbledon trophies, battle beside her sister Serena for Olympic gold, fight for equal pay at the biggest tournaments, and return again and again from setbacks that would have ended other careers. And now? She was on the ground, struggling simply to stand. When Venus tried to rise, the stadium held its collective breath. For a second it looked as if she might defy pain itself. But her leg betrayed her, and she sank back, defeated not in spirit, but in body. The crowd, unable to contain themselves, erupted, not in celebration, but in a chorus of solidarity. "Venus! Venus!" the chants echoed, trembling with emotion. As medics carefully lifted her into a wheelchair, camera flashes lit up the night sky. She raised her hand, regal and calm despite the pain. It was an image of dignity, the kind of gesture only a true champion could make. And in that haunting moment, every fan inside the arena and every viewer watching at home knew they were witnessing history, but not the kind they had hoped for. This was not just a fall on the court. This was the fall of a warrior who had given everything to her sport, and yet, as she was wheeled away, her spirit still shone through, unbroken, unyielding, unforgettable. But this shocking moment was only the beginning of a larger story. For anyone watching that night in Miami, the question came naturally: how much more can a body endure? Venus Williams' collapse was not the result of a single unlucky step. It was the echo of a lifetime spent battling on the world's toughest courts. To understand the depth of this moment, we have to look back at the extraordinary, relentless path that shaped her. From the very beginning, Venus wasn't just another player. She was a phenomenon. In the late 1990s, a tall young woman from Compton walked onto the pristine lawns of Wimbledon and shook the establishment to its core. Her serves thundered like cannons. Her reach covered the court like a shadow, and her calm, almost regal presence told everyone she wasn't there to participate. She was there to dominate. By 2000, she was already a Wimbledon champion. By 2001, she was a global icon. But greatness never comes without a cost. For every trophy she raised, Venus paid in sweat, sacrifice, and pain. Injuries stalked her career like an unrelenting rival. Knees, elbows, wrists. There was always something threatening to derail her momentum. And yet, each time she returned, stronger, hungrier, more determined. Then in 2011 came a diagnosis that would have ended most careers: Sjogren's syndrome, an autoimmune disease that saps energy, causes joint pain, and leaves the body in constant fatigue. For an elite athlete, it was a nightmare. Doctors and analysts speculated that she might never compete at the top again. But Venus did not bow to fate. She reinvented her training, her diet, her entire lifestyle, all to keep stepping onto the court. And in doing so, She inspired millions who faced their own silent battles. Yet the years weigh heavy, even on legends. At 44, Venus was no longer just fighting opponents across the net. She was fighting time itself. Every stride, every swing, every breath demanded more effort than it once had. Younger rivals targeted her weaknesses, exploiting every fraction of a second her body couldn't respond. Still, she refused to surrender. And that's why her appearance at the Miami Open 2025 was so powerful. It wasn't just another tournament for Venus. It was proof. Proof that age could not erase greatness. Proof that passion could outlast pain. The stadium wasn't filled with just tennis fans. It was filled with pilgrims, people who came to witness the living embodiment of resilience. When she walked onto that court, head held high, fans knew they were not just watching an athlete. They were watching a fighter who had carried the weight of an entire sport on her shoulders for decades. From championing equal prize money to breaking racial and cultural barriers in a predominantly white elite sport, Venus had transformed tennis forever. And yet, under the bright lights of Miami, the limits of even the strongest warrior became visible. As the match unfolded, subtle signs betrayed her body. Slight stiffness between rallies, a heavier breath after long points, a leg that seemed to carry just a fraction less strength. They were small details, but for those who had followed her journey, they spoke volumes. The injury that brought her down was not just about that night. It was the culmination of years of sacrifice, years of pushing a body beyond its natural boundaries. Venus had been fighting not just opponents, but time, disease, and the crushing expectations of greatness. And still she stood tall until the moment she could no longer stand at all. That is the cruel irony of sport. The very dedication that builds legends is the same force that can break them. And as the world watched Venus being wheeled off the court, one haunting question lingered in the air. Was this the final chapter, or just another test for a woman who has never known how to quit? The stadium had witnessed countless moments of triumph and heartbreak, but none carried the raw emotion of what unfolded that night. Venus Williams lying on the court in agony wasn't just a scene from a match. It was a symbol that cut across generations, across nations, and across the very soul of tennis. The silence after her collapse lasted only seconds, but it felt eternal. Then came the ripple of gasps, the uneasy murmurs, the scattered cries of, "Come on, Venus!" from desperate fans. Her opponent, frozen in shock, dropped her racket and rushed to the net, hands pressed against her mouth. The umpire abandoned the high chair, signaling frantically for the medics. And when the medical team sprinted onto the court, the crowd finally exhaled, but the tension was suffocating. Venus tried to sit up, waving off their assistance at first, the pride of a warrior refusing to let pain define her. But when she attempted to stand, her body betrayed her. Her leg buckled and her eyes closed for a fraction of a second, a glimpse of defeat she would never willingly show. The applause that erupted was not for a point, not for a game, but for her courage. Thousands of voices merged into one, chanting her name. "Venus! Venus!" It was no longer a tennis match. It was a collective prayer. The image that followed will live on in sports history. Venus in a wheelchair, her hand raised gracefully to the crowd, a champion acknowledging her people. Flashbulbs lit up the night like stars. Some fans clutched signs. "Go Venus! Legend forever." Their tears smudging the ink. Others simply stood still, unable to believe they had just witnessed what felt like the end of an era. And beyond the stadium, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, social media exploded. Prayers for Venus trended worldwide. Fellow athletes, from tennis legends to stars of other sports, sent messages of solidarity. Serena Williams, always her fiercest competitor and closest ally, posted, "My sister, my hero, you've carried us all for so long. We love you." The post was shared millions of times within hours, a digital embrace for a fallen giant. Billie Jean King, Martina Navratilova, and other greats of the game wrote heartfelt tributes, calling her not only a champion but a trailblazer who had fought battles far greater than any scoreboard could show. Even her rivals expressed their heartbreak, admitting that seeing Venus in pain was like watching a pillar of the sport crack before their eyes. Television studios around the world broke their schedules to replay the haunting footage. Analysts spoke in hushed tones. Some speculated about her future. Was this the moment that finally closed the book on her legendary career? Others refused to believe it, reminding audiences of the countless times Venus had returned from adversity. "If anyone can rise again, it's her," one commentator insisted. The tournament itself was shaken. The draw reshuffled and the headlines shifted, but none of it seemed to matter. fans weren't talking about who might win the Miami Open anymore. They were talking about Venus. Her injury overshadowed everything else, uniting fans and players alike in a rare moment where competition dissolved into collective grief and admiration. Clips of her greatest matches resurfaced online. Her first Wimbledon title in 2000, her Olympic golds, her iconic outfits that pushed tennis fashion into bold new territories, her fiery speeches on equal pay. Social media transformed into a living museum of Venus Williams' career, as if the world was reminding itself just how much she had given. It was more than just sympathy. It was solidarity. Venus's pain had become everyone's pain, her fight, everyone's fight. And in that moment, the world wasn't divided by winners and losers, rivals and fans. It was united by respect for a woman who had transcended her sport. But as the tears and tributes poured in, one question loomed larger than all the rest. Was this heartbreaking injury the final curtain call for Venus Williams? As the wheelchair rolled slowly out of the Miami Open arena, one haunting thought echoed through the minds of fans everywhere. Was this the end? For weeks, analysts debated. Could a 44-year-old legend return from yet another devastating injury? Was this collapse not just the breaking of a body, but the closing of a chapter that had defined modern tennis? And yet, for those who knew Venus Williams, the answer was far from simple. She had always been more than the scoreboards, more than the trophies. She was resilience itself. Venus's legacy is already secure. 7 Grand Slam singles titles, 4 Olympic gold medals, 14 Grand Slam doubles titles with her sister Serena. Each one a chapter in a story of sibling dominance the sport had never seen before and may never see again. But her greatness extends beyond the numbers. Venus fought battles that reshaped tennis forever, demanding equal prize money at Wimbledon, opening doors for women of color, and proving that power and elegance could coexist on a court once resistant to change. This is why her injury carried such weight. It was not just the fall of a champion, it was the reminder of what it cost to be one. For decades, Venus pushed her body beyond limits, playing through pain, illness, fatigue, and pressure few could ever comprehend. Every slam of her racket, every sprint to the net, every thunderous serve was a sacrifice. And now, that sacrifice was laid bare for the world to see. But maybe this moment is not about endings. Maybe it is about perspective. Even if Venus never plays another professional match, her story remains unfinished. Legends don't retire, they evolve. Her influence continues in every young girl who picks up a racket believing she belongs on the world stage, and in every player who earns equal pay at a major tournament, and every fan who finds courage in her fight against illness and adversity. And perhaps that is the truest mark of the greatness, not whether you can still win, but whether you can still inspire. On that night in Miami, as Venus lifted her hand to the crowd, she gave us one final gift, the image of unshakable dignity in the face of heartbreak. It was a silent promise that, though her body may falter, her spirit never will. So, what comes next? Will we see Venus attempt one last comeback, proving once more that age and pain cannot define her? Or will we witness the graceful exit of a queen who has already given everything she had to give? The truth is, no one knows, not even Venus herself. And maybe that uncertainty is the very thing that keeps us watching, waiting, hoping. Because the story of Venus Williams has always been about more than tennis. It's about resilience, about breaking barriers, about daring to dream when the world doubted you. And whether this moment was an ending or a beginning, one thing is certain. Her legacy is untouchable. Now, I turn to you. When you think about Venus Williams, about her triumphs, her struggles, her courage, what does she mean to you? Is she simply one of the greatest athletes of all time, or is she something more, a reminder of the power of human spirit? If this story moved you, if it reminded you of why we fall in love with sport in the first place, then let's honor her together. Leave a comment below with your favorite Venus memory. Share this video with someone who needs to remember the meaning of resilience. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue to bring you the untold stories, the emotional moments, and the unforgettable legacies of the world's greatest athletes. Because Venus Williams may be injured, but her story and her impact are far from over.